Welcome to my studio. I'm Eleen Polson, counselling psychologist and expressive arts therapist, and I specialize in trauma release. I have a practice in Pretoria, South Africa, and since 2009 I've had the privilege to conduct expressive arts therapy workshops and train other mental health practitioners as a CPD activity. It is from this experience that I would like to share with you the insights I've gained, and not only to inspire your professional but also your personal lives, because I've seen expressive arts really unlocking potential. Expressive arts is a collective term referring to all creative expressions, including drama, creative writing, singing, music making, visual arts and crafts, where expressive arts therapy is an integration between two or more forms of art expression in a supportive setting to experience and express feeling sense. So the first step was to deconstruct the whole idea of what creativity is. We come out of a society where we see creativity as only in the domain of the fine arts or the performers. And if you don't sell artwork or perform, then people think they're not creative. Many people came on our workshops to say they would like to learn something about expressive art therapy, but they're really not creative, or they can't draw, or they can't sing, or am I going to make them dance? And it was this expectation that you need to do these things well and on a performing level that we first had to deconstruct. Because creativity, how we introduced it, was an energy accessible to everyone. An energy that we had to reclaim for our lives and for our health. I love to recite the research mentioned in Kobus Neertling's work based on the Torrance test of creativity, where he looked at research saying that 98% of little children was superiorly creative. 98%. And then it went down fast. Only 10% of teenagers, and by the time we were adults, only 2% of adults is engaging in creative activities. Why? Because we're not encouraged to embrace our creative selves. And this is what I've seen over and over. Once the foundation has been laid, one can engage in the process without expectation of an outcome, and just for the joy of creation itself. I had the privilege to experience a specific technique called the creative connection, and I was trained by Natalie Rogers in Ireland in 2009. She's a renowned expressive arts therapist and the daughter of Carl Rogers. In this technique, more than one media is followed by the other, and it's a simple recipe to help people drop from their analytical mind into an intuitive creative process. What is really worth repeating here is research she quotes in one of her books about the anthropological wisdom that in all ancient tribes, when someone got sick and they went to the healer would say, "When last did you sing, dance, create something, or sat in silence around the fire?" Because there you need to go and retrieve your soul, retrieve your health by singing, dancing, creating, or sitting in silence. So expressive arts was seen as a healing ointment, essential for our health. And once people realized this, it is so much easier to commit to the creative process. Coming back to the foundation of what made this group's work is that it was based on person-centered principles. That means specifically that we created a safe container, a safe space free of judgment and free of evaluation. Now, it's a whole paradigm shift that we need to do, out of judgment into connection. If you think you will be judged for something, evaluated as right or wrong or good or bad, your whole reptilian brain is on defense. It wants to protect you from looking silly or being wrong or harmed. And tell me, working with trauma, I realized the reptilian brain is alive and well, even though we try to override it with our thinking brains. So creating a safe space is definitely the most important thing for you to relax and play and experiment. And once you realize the focus is on creating and experiencing, and that it doesn't matter what others think, as long as you give yourself permission, it's really a short step to enjoying the creative process. Long ago, I would tell people to step out of their left brain functioning, where we planned and had a specific outcome in mind, and where we were in control of the process and having very specific ideas of how this end product should look like. And we invited people to create from the right side of the brain, step into process where it was more unfamiliar, more intuitive. It was more about feeling and experiencing. Now we realize that this can be quite a scary thing. If your whole upbringing, your whole schooling, your whole training has only developed this one way of operating, it can be extremely daunting and scary to let go of control, especially if you think you are going to be judged on this. And so it's very important to notice the creative blocks, the expectations, and our own critical voices. We need to befriend that part in us. We need to understand what is it that drives us away from the intuitive, spontaneous process. And then, when we are able to give ourselves permission and we can exercise this muscle of process rather than in product, it becomes easier and easier to drop into a creativity where you don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be, but you can really experience the health and well-being and the aliveness of the creative process. Over the years, I found that the professionals really had a hunger to reconnect to their own creativity and to experience this non-judgmental space without the sword evaluation hanging over their heads. And it was really wonderful to see the nourishment that came out of that process. The different mediums brought different challenges. For some, the art would be easy, or the movement, whereas working with clay or voice work were really difficult. And I found that it was especially the areas that there was most resistance that often brought the most healing once it was engaged with. What was enjoyable for everyone was the music. In this recipe that I've developed to help people drop into the process, music plays a fundamental part. And the reason for this is that music fosters movement, and movement is the first activity in any creative process. Whether it's if you get up off your chair or move your arms across the paper, this is what needs to happen. You need to move. In trauma, we see that people are often frozen. Whether it's because of a traumatic incident or just a culture where free expressive movement is not allowed and inhibited, often the stuckness is what we need to overcome to get to general health. From an integrative health perspective and body work, body psychotherapy, we are looking for flexibility and pulsation of movement, of the muscle, of the being. And music is my secret weapon. I use the impetus of music, the vibrational force, to get the whole organism moving, of both the individual as well as the group can move to music in a wonderful way. I'm grateful for Carol, Lotter and Andolin dos Santos' course Keys for Clinicians, and Gina Castell's short music journeys that taught me a lot about music. but it is through movement modalities like biodanza and 5 rhythms, and spending hours and hours over years where I could feel the music from my inside. And slowly my Calvinistic frozen body was unthawed, where I could move, initially only walking on music, until it became part of my fiber. Biodanza is a South American movement modality, and they do understand music and movement. And I had the privilege to attend percussion and rhythm courses in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, and even dance yin and yang, the integration of male and female energies, in Portugal. So there is places where you can really explore the depth and what music can bring to your whole being, and especially in terms of integrating the mind, the heart and the body, the thinking, the feeling and the sensations. So in terms of biodanza, the important thing is to create a weekly class or an opportunity for people to deeply connect to what they called a vivencia. And a vivencia is a fully lived moment where your heart, your mind and your body is resonating together. And music is a powerful tool in this process. And biodanza like to look at the semantics of music, where we look at the origins, the emotions that it fosters, and whether it's organic or disorganic, whether it is creating trance and a dissolution or an integration, and playing with those forces. Biodanza focus on connecting with yourself and with others around you, so it's a great group activity experience. From 5 rhythms, I learned the difference between going with a flow and a wave, and where there's also space to disintegrate and use discordant music to explore falling apart, as well as stillness, movement and stillness. In Kundalini Yoga, for example, they also use music with a rhythmic force to connect to that inner energy that one can sense in your whole body. It also helps to get exercises really going and push through with willpower. It is some of these exercises that are incorporated in our accessing of the creative process. And it helps people to drop out of their analytical minds into free movement, feeling the music from the inside, and from that space expressing in gesture and in creative acts. Now I would like to look at a specific modality, and that is using our voice, sounding, making music or singing. I find over the years that voice work really makes people scared, and that there's a lot of restriction and clamping down on our voices. Often people haven't used their voices for anything but talking or the occasional shout in 30 or 40 years. Even in our culture, there is a strong message that children should be seen and not heard. And unfortunately, in trauma, one of the first things that's shut down is our ability to voice or speak up, and that there's a clamping down of our throat muscles. It's also very interesting to notice that the voice and vocal cords have a very similar look to our pelvic structures, and with female trauma and aggression a lot centered around the pelvis and sexual experiences, it makes a lot of sense that we have lost our voices, and that regaining our voices is part of the healing process. In my trauma work, specifically with breathwork practitioners like Dr. Ila Manga and the international Wim Hof, It's now known that a lot of tension can be released through the breath and through singing and through voicing. So the nervous system builds up tension, and we might be in a fight or flight mode or a frozen mode. And then the nervous system can down-regulate very easily through deep breathing and singing and toning. So in our group work, we introduced toning as a wonderful technique to be very gentle and careful and non-judgmental, to invite people to reconnect again to that free flow of voice. So the toning technique that I love to use was made known by Don Campbell, and it's based on the work of Laura Elizabeth Keys, a Franciscan nun. So we start off firstly with sighing, and I must confess, if this was a live event, I would have loved to get everyone involved to experience this as a short, beautiful technique. It's especially powerful if there's more than one person, and a big group is wonderful. It gives us a little bit experience of as it is in heaven. The first step is just sighing. Just opening the throat, and often that can lead to a bit of a yawn, and a yawn is very addictive, like you know, and contagious. So just where you are for a moment, try to give yourself a nice big yawn, and you'll feel it all the way to the back of your muscles, relaxing. And then once you've really yawned it out and relaxed the shoulders, relaxed the knees, feel the feet on the ground, I invite you to tone from a low tone all the way to a high tone, and run a scale all the way up and all the way down. And it's really not about what it sounds like. It is about what it feels like. And it sounds a bit like an ambulance or something very funny to start off with. So we will start with a low tone, scale up and down, and do that a couple of times. It would sound something like this. Ooh. And once we've done this a couple of times, get a few laughs out of the way, a little bit of tension, then on the down, you will hold a long note, and you will breathe in between and experiment after a couple of times, really feeling how it feels to go in different sounds and shapes of your mouth, like oh, oh, anything goes. And once we do that all together, you really drop into a deep space of resonance. And I encourage you to feel where on your body do you feel that vibration? Where do you feel that sounding? And play with it. One of my colleagues is a voice movement therapist called WMT. And we have worked together before to really bring this toning and voicing in an individual space and in a group space to unleash the creativity. My initial teachers were Dutch music therapists that were very comfortable with singing and toning and different ways of using the voice. But over the years, I found my own way of connecting to the music, the sounds. I found what worked for me, what really made me alive, and connected to that. So in conclusion, I would like to invite you to reflect. What works for you? What makes you alive? What gives you that vibrational feeling? To what music do you connect? And how can you apply this to your own health, to your own integration, and your own creativity? And from that place, we can really offer this gift to the world.